The smartest way to deal with toxic people? It's not cutting them off right away, it's not fighting them, and it's not even forgiving them. The smartest way is to first learn how to identify them, to recognize their strategies before you get entangled. As Carl Jung once suggested through archetypes, evil isn't always loud and obvious. Often, it's disguised as charm, care, or even love. And if you don't know what to look for, you'll mistake toxicity for passion, manipulation for kindness, and betrayal for intimacy. Good people have an obligation to study evil. Why? Because evil doesn't show up waving a red flag. It shows up in ways that entice you. In The Great Mother, Eric Newman analyzes the archetype of the mother figure and warns that when the nurturing principle turns destructive, it can devour rather than protect. This mirrors what happens with toxic people. They weaponize care. Bertrand Russell, in his work The Devil, draws on the figure of Mephistopheles from Goethe's Faust, not as chaos, but as clever cynicism. Evil often tempts us not by violence, but by logic, twisted just enough to lure us off course. Literature has always been one of humanity's most reliable maps for recognizing evil, because great writers understood that it rarely announces itself directly. Instead, it seduces, disguises, and rationalizes. Take John Milton's Paradise Lost. Satan doesn't appear at first as a grotesque monster. He enters the story as charismatic, eloquent, persuasive, even heroic to some readers. This is how toxic people operate. They do not dominate right away. They win loyalty with charm, they cloak their ambition in grand ideals, and only once you're devoted do they reveal the darker demand for control. Milton teaches us that the gravest danger is not the obvious villain, but the one who seems noble at first. Then there is Dante's Inferno. When Dante imagines the lowest circle of hell, he does not place the worst sinners in fire, he places them in ice. Why ice? Because betrayal is colder than rage. Fire consumes quickly, betrayal freezes trust, paralyzes intimacy, and leaves the soul numb. Dante understood that the ultimate sin is not passion, but treachery, the act of turning closeness into a weapon. Toxic people mirror this. They don't always scream or rage. Often, they quietly freeze the very bond they pretended to cherish. And then consider Bertrand Russell's meditation on Goethe's Faust, where the devil appears not as chaos, but as Mephistopheles, clever, cynical, mocking. Evil here is not the violent destroyer, but the sarcastic voice that plants doubt, erodes hope, and makes despair sound rational. Toxic people often do the same. They use wit and intellect to wear down your spirit, to convince you that your dreams or boundaries are naive. Across these texts, we see a taxonomy. Categories of evil that repeat across time: the charming betrayer, the freezing traitor, the cynical tempter. Literature gives us the language to recognize them before they devour us in our own lives. So how do we apply these archetypal warnings to modern life? Toxic people don't simply hurt us at random. They enact recognizable roles, categories of evil that echo the same patterns writers and philosophers warned us about for centuries. The betrayer. This is the one who takes your deepest gift, trust, and turns it into a weapon. They may begin as your confidant, your lover, or your supposed ally, But slowly, you realize that every secret you shared has been stored as ammunition. They use your openness against you, twisting intimacy into leverage. Dante would place them in ice, for nothing chills the soul more than realizing the hand you held was the very hand that undermined you. The seducer. This figure makes chaos feel like chemistry. They are magnetic, alluring, and skilled at weaving passion with danger. You tell yourself, this must be love, when really it is the intoxication of instability. Just as Milton's Satan dazzled the angels with rhetoric, the seducer captures devotion through charm before revealing the havoc beneath. The tragedy of the seducer is that they train you to confuse anxiety for desire. The cynic, Mephistopheles. This archetype doesn't scream, doesn't rage. Instead, they mock. They plant small seeds of doubt in your spirit, eroding joy with clever cynicism. They belittle dreams, sneer at hope, and turn your optimism into something to be ridiculed. Like Mephistopheles in Goethe's Faust, their evil is intellectual, sarcastic, corrosive, and when you live under their influence, you begin to wonder whether your own light was ever real at all. The devouring caregiver, the dark mother. Perhaps the most deceptive of all, this archetype weaponizes care. On the surface, they smother you with protection, attention, and guidance. But look closer, and their nurturing has sharp edges. They overprotect, overmanage, and manipulate, all while insisting it's for your own good. Eric Newman warned that when the archetype of the mother turns destructive, it devours rather than nourishes. In relationships, this devouring caregiver keeps you infantilized, convincing you that without their control, you cannot survive. When you understand these categories, you stop blaming yourself for not seeing toxicity sooner. You recognize that you were never naive. You were facing archetypes so ancient and so convincing that they've trapped humanity in their spell for centuries. The task is not shame, but recognition. Naming the pattern is the first act of freedom. So what is the smartest way to deal with toxic people? It's not rage, it's not instant forgiveness, and it's not dramatic severing of ties. The wiser path is far more deliberate. 1. Identify the archetype. Naming the pattern strips away its illusion. When you can say, this is the betrayer or this is the cynic, you stop personalizing the harm. Their behavior ceases to feel like an intimate mystery and becomes part of a much larger story humanity has faced before. Naming the archetype is like switching on the light in a dark room. Suddenly, you see the shape of the shadow, and it can no longer terrify you in the same way. 2. Withdraw your energy. Evil thrives on reaction. It feeds on outrage, tears, frantic apologies, desperate attempts to win it over. Every ounce of energy you pour into the toxic dynamic only fertilizes it. Withdrawing your energy doesn't mean passive acceptance, it means starving the cycle. Refuse to give the betrayer your secrets. Refuse to give the cynic your hope. Refuse to give the seducer your longing. What cannot feed will eventually wither. 3. Anchor in reality. Toxicity works like smoke. It clouds your perception, makes you doubt your own eyes and memory. That is why grounding yourself in reality is essential. Journaling keeps a written record of truth when gaslighting tries to erase it. Therapy offers perspective when your vision narrows under manipulation. Trusted friends and community remind you who you are when the toxic voice tries to rewrite your story. As Dante teaches us, the only way out of the inferno is to walk with a guide who holds the map. And here is the paradox. Studying evil does not corrupt the soul, it strengthens it. Milton, Dante, Russell, and Jung all remind us that awareness is protection. To name the archetype, to refuse it your energy, and to root yourself in reality is not to be obsessed with darkness, but to guard your light. The goal is not to become fascinated with evil, but to become immune to its disguise. Have you ever met someone who used your trust against you? Drop the word trust in the comments because breaking silence is the first step in breaking the cycle. Evil doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes it looks like the person you love. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is to know their disguises. Learn their taxonomy, name their archetype, and refuse to let your trust become their weapon. If this resonated, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to see through the mask of toxicity.